We heard a big cat rescue in Citrus Park. Heard its founder talk about the abused and unwanted cats that she saved.
But former volunteers say there's more that you should know. And now they're talking publicly for the first time to Bay News 9's Chris Hawes about what they say is the rest of the story. Chris.
Well, Alan Lee, as you know, it's Big Cat's mission to make you care about animals. If you visit their website, the first page tells you they're providing a home to, quote, abused and abandoned cats. But former volunteers say what you may not know is many of the cats living there weren't in need of being rescued. They were bought from breeders to be bred. For nearly 3 weeks, we've talked to breeders, sellers, and former volunteers and combed through hundreds of pages of documents to find the real story. Here's what we learned. Big Cat rescues home to nearly 150 cats, but many of the cats were not rescued. In fact, at least 30 of the cats were actually born right there at the facility. You can see some of them here in this home video. Former volunteers tell us other stories are, at best, exaggerated.
If it's not a rescue, it shouldn't be tagged as a rescue.
Jim Moore volunteered for nearly 5 years at Big Cat Rescue, even at one point living on the property. But now he and others intimately familiar with Big Cat Rescue say it's time they spoke publicly to set the record straight about the nonprofit and its founder.
She wanted to one day have the largest private collection of exotic cats in the world.
They point to examples like Fluffy the Serval as one of many possibly misleading stories on the website. The website says many of Big Cat Rescue's servals were purchased at auctions where uncaring owners dumped them. And then halfway down the page it says Fluffy, quote, came as a result of the pet trade. We tracked down Fluffy's seller, who told us how she raised the serval on baby food and would have only sold her to a good home.
She was sold as a pet and possible breeder.
We also found the former owner of this cat, described on the website as coming to Big Cat Rescue after a pet shop owner was afraid she would bite children who taunted her. The pet shop owner says she parted with the serval because she was paid $1,000. One of the most convincing pieces of evidence for many of Baskin's critics is this video. It's of tiger cub Shere Khan. If you believe Big Cat Rescue's website, he was, quote, unwanted and uncared for and, quote, could not walk. But listen to the story Big Cat Rescue's founder told shortly after getting him.
This is Shere Khan. He was bottle raised in a loving and nurturing home.
I want to see a normal tiger cub.
There is one person that knows 100% of what the truth is about Big Cat Rescue. That's founder Carole Baskin. We sat down with her to discuss the allegations. Do you think there's a perception out there that the majority of cats here came out of abusive situations?
I think so.
Baskin stood by her website story of Shere Khan's abuse, despite the video of Shere Khan showing the cub standing on his hind legs.
He could lift himself, but just barely.
But the tiger is only one of the stories that former volunteers point to. They're also troubled by claims many animals on the site, including these leopards, were born into the pet trade. But here's what the website does not say.
The majority of the animals that are listed on the website where it says born into the pet trade were actually born there.
That's because back prior to 1997, that's what we were. We were pet owners. We were the pet trade.
And that's one of the few points where Baskin and her critics agree. Carole Baskin and her husband sold.
We went through a whole range of beliefs.
And bred cats.
He was set on breeding virtually every cat here.
Baskin says she's upfront about that history. The extent of that breeding, however, is described nowhere on the site. That we did find one statement that said no exotic cats have been bred there since 1997. Volunteers who worked there, however, say that's simply not true.
There were some binturongs born.
Binturongs are more commonly known as bear cats. Former volunteer Jim Moore says he believes the bear cats' births were no accident. Was that purposeful?
Yes.
This mid-1998 newsletter announces the imminent birth of Carole, a medium-sized exotic cat with large pointed ears. We showed Baskin the newsletter.
You got me on that. I don't know.
I understand.
It's not in the list of cats that we currently have.
The list, Baskin says, shows she's telling the truth about the animals here at Big Cat Rescue and that they're now in better homes than they once were. But she does not want us to copy or videotape the list for fear her opponents will, in her words,
use the portions that they can zero in on.
Of course, that's what's already happening with other records that have leaked out. Alan Lee?
Interesting. Thank you, Chris.
Thanks, Chris. And Baskin says some of the people attacking her are motivated by a piece of legislation that she's backing, which would severely limit the ownership.
A former Pinellas Park City Council candidate gets a warning.